Russian President Vladimir Putin has called on Ukrainian troops fighting in the Kursk region to surrender. This shortly after US President Donald Trump urged him to spare the lives of the Ukrainian troops. Trump says his envoy held productive talks with Putin on the proposed 30-day ceasefire, even as Russia's counteroffensive intensifies in Kursk region. Now, Russia claims to have retaken Sudzha, the biggest town in the Kursk region. What you are seeing on your screens right now are the images of Sudzha in ruins. This marks a significant shift in the ongoing 3-year-old war. The key town in Kursk was captured by Ukraine in August last year. Ukraine's top military commander, General Alexander Syrsky, says Russian aircraft conducted so many strikes on Kursk that Sudzha has been almost completely destroyed. Russia claims it has intensified evacuation of civilians from Sudzha. In a video released by Russia, evacuees can be seen in a temporary accommodation point where they receive psychological support. Further, Russia has announced that its forces have regained control of 28 settlements in western Kursk over the past week, while Ukraine has reportedly repelled 22 Russian attacks in the region. Now, as the fierce fighting rages on in the Kursk region, President Putin has called on Ukrainian troops fighting in Kursk to surrender in response to Trump's call. He goes on to say that the Ukrainian troops will be guaranteed life if they lay down their arms.
In order to effectively implement the call of the President of the United States of America, we need a corresponding order from the military and political leadership of Ukraine to its military units to lay down their arms and surrender.
Now, this comes after Trump wrote on his social media platform, Truth Social, that he has strongly requested Putin that lives of Ukrainian soldiers be spared. A direct conversation between the two leaders is yet to take place, but Trump's special envoy, Steve Witkoff, met with the Russian president in Moscow on Thursday. Trump said in his post that they had very good and productive discussions. Later, at Joint Base Andrews outside Washington, Trump said some pretty good vibes are coming from Russia in talks to reach a ceasefire.
From the standpoint about a ceasefire and ultimately a deal, some pretty good vibes coming out of Russia.
U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has reiterated the need for concessions, calling on both Ukraine and Russia to make compromises. After the G7 talks in Canada, Rubio said that the only way to end the war is through negotiations, which involves both sides making concessions.
That there has to be some level of concessions. What those concessions are remains to be seen. That'll have to be part of the negotiation. But it's not going to be helpful to enter into those negotiations making blanket statements that may give an excuse for one side or the other not to participate in it.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has said that diplomacy efforts are moving towards the end of war and closer to peace. He said Ukraine has accepted the American proposal of unconditional silence in the sky, at sea and on the front. Zelensky further said that he had discussed the state of diplomacy with French President Macron, reaffirming that Ukraine has clear support from France. European nations are convening in Kiev's support amid growing worries over Washington cozying up to Moscow. In a social media post, Macron also said that he had discussed the ceasefire proposal with Zelensky and British Prime Minister Keir Starmer. Macron has called on Moscow to stop its acts of violence, accept the ceasefire proposal made by Washington and Kiev, and stop making statements aimed at delaying the process. Now, Starmer has also accused Putin of not taking ceasefire attempts seriously, stressing that he can't be allowed to play games with Trump's deal. Now, for more on this, we were earlier joined by Dr. Charles Kupchan. He is a senior fellow at the Council on Foreign Relations. And here's what he had to say.
Well, we don't actually know the details of what's being discussed. And I think it's a bit concerning that in his statements this week, Mr. Putin, although he said he was open to the agreement, also talked about caps on the mobilization of Ukrainian troops, no more Western weapons flowing to Ukraine. Those are demands that the Ukrainians simply cannot comply with because it would leave Ukraine exposed. It would allow Russia to regenerate while Ukraine simply has to sit on its hands. And so I think one concession from Putin will have to be to allow Ukraine to build the capability to defend itself so that Russia doesn't try this again. And perhaps in return, the Ukrainians could say, we will agree not to use force, not to use violence to try to retake those parts of Ukraine that are currently under Russian occupation.